better control of
A
illegal
continuación, le
fisheries.
invito al señor
And
doctor
so now
Campbell
I would
Davies
like to
para que nos
invite
pueda
Campbell
hacer
David
su presentación sobre nuevos
to
métodos
speak
para estimaciones
about
de
new
abundancia
methods
y
to
trazabilidad de
estimate
productos.
abundance and the traceability of products.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both to Chile and to the United States for hosting this meeting. Both my previous presenters had provided an excellent introduction to what I'd like to talk to you about today, which is two new tools to deal with both the assessment of hard-to-deal-with international fisheries, in particular tuna fisheries, and an approach that's been successfully used in the CCSBT, that's the Commission for the Conservation of Southern Bluefin Tuna, to start a rebuilding process for that stock. So there are three perennial challenges for sustainable fisheries, which Renato has pointed out quite well. One is how many fish are being caught in our IUU fishing problem. One is how many fish are left, because how many caught with how many left allows you to basically calculate what a sustainable yield would be. And the one that the wicked problem is getting people to agree on how many can be caught into the future. So the thing I'd like to just briefly present to you today is a bit of a case for change from the sorry tale of southern bluefin tuna, which is a bit of a transforming tale into a much more positive future. So as those of you that are familiar with it would know that it's a highly depleted stock. The 2011 assessment had the stock at about 3 to 5% of its unfished level. And if you can see that figure there, it had been there for a very long time. There's better than 15 years that it had been at that level. So this goes to Renato's point, is that even with that sort of evidence in front of people, it takes a crisis to get decisions to be made. So the strong evidence and the crisis was the strong evidence of recruitment failure, which is shown in the circle that's moved to the left. So that happened in about 2005, 2006. Those very weak year classes became evident. And the other thing that became evident in 2005 was a source of very large sustained illegal catches that induced very high uncertainty in the assessments, because the catch per unit effort from those fisheries is used in the assessment. So the first thing I'd like to focus on is that we required at that point a new way to assess the stock to determine how many fish are in the water. So how many spawning SBT are there? It's a very simple concept. This is one of the most exciting pieces of research I've been involved in my career, and I think it's the closest that fisheries biologists get to physics. So I'll try and explain it simply. We have juvenile fish and we have adult fish. There's one law of nature in that each fish has two parents. You can only have two parents, and each of the children of those parents imparts a tag through their DNA into the adult stock. So if you take a sample of the adults and a sample of the parents and compare them, will get a set of what we call parent-offspring pairs. And very simply, the adult abundance is inversely proportional to the number of the number of matches that you find in that sample. Now that may sound ludicrously simple, and it took us 3 years to convince funding agencies that we weren't mad, but we did. And we've successfully applied this to the international southern bluefin tuna fishery. It's been through a separate international peer review, because obviously you don't, with a fishery of that controversy, you don't put something like this into the international domain without being sure that your science is right. The results showed that the actual stock size, the actual spawning stock size, was 2.5 times what the assessment thought was there. So that was also a good bit of luck, because the number was bigger, it meant people were happier about the results. I think if the number had been the other way around, we may have had more difficulty. And the other thing about this method is because it is essentially a mark recapture experiment, it can be the data, not the estimate, but the actual data can be easily incorporated into the conventional stock assessments for tuna. So this approach has been adopted by the CCSBT. It's used in the assessment now, and we've just been doing work for them for how it can be used to directly monitor the rebuilding plan that the CCSBT has agreed to. So this is quite a significant change for anyone familiar with tuna fisheries would know the problems there are with assessing such highly migratory and difficult species, and this has really made a game changer in the case of SBT. But it's also a method that can be applied very broadly to basically any vertebrate. So it's applicable to fish, it's applicable to sharks, it's applicable to dugongs, and we currently have 4 projects in Australia looking at this for threatened species of shark. Sorry. The one other area that we've invested quite substantially over in the past 5 years has been next generation sequencing and the power of genetics to understand populations and to both I guess provide truth in labelling and also identify IUU catch. Now if you'd told me 5 years ago that the picture on the left, which is essentially a home medical device, would be running through your iPhone, would be possible, most people wouldn't have believed you. We've spent several $1 million testing different machines and different platforms for using this, both to identify species of tuna in the field. So this doesn't require a lab, doesn't require a PCR machine, can be done in the field. To provide both provenance of populations for, as I said, for catch documentation schemes across the globe, and to provide for individual product tracking in the context of high-value species such as tuna or toothfish. Just to give you one example of this, this is a result that is in the paper in press at the moment with Nature Science Reports. Yellowfin tuna, as you would know, in the Pacific are managed essentially as 2 large stocks and believed to be a highly migratory species. This figure shows you in the top that there is quite distinct populations between the Western Pacific and the Eastern Pacific in the two different shades in the front, and that there are 2 different populations within the Western Pacific. This has quite substantial implications for being able to track catch and also for the management of these fisheries. The final point that I would like to touch on is the practical implementation of the precautionary approach through the use of formal harvest strategies or management procedures. This, again, going to Renato's example, is the simulation testing of whole management regimes to decide on how to set quotas or levels of fishing. Again, this has been done within the CCSBT. It's a difficult process, mostly because it involves having stakeholders agree to specifically what it is they're trying to achieve through the fishery. But this has now been implemented in 2011. There have been 3 TAC decisions made using this method, and it has taken a lot of the heat and controversy out of an international fishery. And those that are interested can find more details there. So some practical actions, most of them have already been touched on. We need to increase the momentum to those existing agreements. The port-state measures, implementing these sort of techniques into the port-state measures will provide a greater aspect of transparency. Further trials of this close kin method will provide us with more transparent and better estimates of fish stocks. And the wider implementation of formal harvest strategies will help, again, increase transparency and improve the cost effectiveness of management. Thank you.
Costo-beneficio de la gestión. Gracias.
Muchas gracias al doctor Davies.
Thank you very much, Dr. Davies. We will be following with great attention all of these developments that you have spoken to us about. I would now like to invite Dr. Max Agüero to speak to us about a comprehensive, systemic approach to fishing management. Good morning, and thank you, Undersecretary.
I was asked first to prepare this presentation in English, but then later this morning I was reminded that I was in Chile and that I should speak in Spanish. So please bear with me, and I will continue in Spanish now.
This morning I would like to share with you some experiences that I have had during my years of work, more than 40. Since I left Rhode Island University and I went to Southeast Asia for many years, and then in Latin America with the UN, and now at the Santa Maria University here in Valparaiso, with regard to fishing management. And I would like to share with you some thoughts that somewhat academically, but very much linked to professional practice in Asian countries and Latin American countries, where going down to the beach is always absolutely necessary. And so I would like to share with you first a brief review, very quick, of the condition of the oceans, resources, and review some of the shortcomings of traditional approaches to fisheries management, and that have led us to the deplorable situation that we are in today, and briefly discuss the main features of the more contemporary and effective approaches to fisheries management. The going home message, as the Undersecretary said, will be to promote and try to carry out a comprehensive ecosystemic approach to development, linking the ocean ecosystems and resources to human action within the context of the drivers for sustainable behavior. That is a comprehensive approach, adaptive and ecosystemic. A very quick review of marine resources and oceans in relation to the issues that we encounter in its management is that there is an increasing loss of biodiversity and habitats. There's increasing decline in the ability to carry out its ecological functions, and there are increasing conflicts. A lack of effective means to resolve disputes and conflicts. There are increased health hazards, illegal fishing, unreported and unregulated and non-sustainable continues ahead, and ocean acidification, also of coral reefs, and a loss of potential of revenues and the benefits that could be created by oceans. The World Bank, in a recent study of a couple of years back that I also took part in, estimates a loss of financial benefits due to poor management and non-comprehensive use of the benefits that could be created by our fisheries resources at
Eso es una pérdida para las comunidades y para la sociedad entera.
$1 billion a
year. Del hecho de enfocar, diseñar y aplicar políticas de gestión inapropiadas.
And that has to do with implementing inappropriate policies. And so the shortcomings of this traditional approach is that they've not been able to appropriately take in the exogenous and stochastic factors typical of fisheries and the operation of ocean ecosystems. There's insufficient data and of understanding of these dynamic processes
adelante en la interacción
involved
naturaleza,
in this
océanos
interaction
y
between
humanos.
nature, oceans, and humans.
Hay una débil fiscalización
There's
y
very
aplicación
poor
de las políticas de gestión.
control and
Junto
enforcement
con ello,
of
un
policies,
débil monitoreo.
and also very weak monitoring.
La existencia de las externalidades
And also
y de
the
las fallas del
existence
mercado
of
son quizás una de las
externalities
principales razones
and
que
market
lleva
failings
a
are
comportamientos
among the main
indeseables de los
reasons
humanos y
that
los
lead to
pescadores
undesirable
en
behaviors by
términos de la
both human and
sustentabilidad.
fishermen in terms of
Y el hecho de
sustainability,
no tener todavía
and
mecanismos
not
eficientes de
yet
minimizar
having
esos
sufficient
efectos
mechanisms for taking in
indeseables.
these undesired
Y por tanto también
impacts.
hay
And so
pocos
therefore there are
incentivos
also few
para
incentives
un tratamiento y un
for
comportamiento sustentable en la pesca.
sustainable
Por tanto, los
treatment of
requerimientos
fisheries.
de los enfoques
So therefore,
contemporáneos
requirements of
que
the contemporary
se
approaches
debe mejorar el entendimiento
are that it's
de los
better to
procesos
understand,
dinámicos,
to improve
de la relación de
understanding
los
of the
humanos
dynamic
con
processes involved in the
ecosistemas.
relations between humans and
se deben desarrollar
ecosystems. It is
mejores
necessary to
métodos,
develop better methods,
integrando estos elementos en el
taking in all
diseño de
of
las
these
políticas de
elements
gestión,
in our design of
y
management
mejorar
policies, and
principalmente para
to
evitar parte
mainly to
de la
avoid part
pesca ilegal y los
of
problemas ambientales
the
de
illegal
los océanos, los
fishery,
sistemas
fishing,
de
and
monitoreo, control, vigilancia y
systems
especialmente
for monitoring,
fiscalización.
control,
Y
surveillance.
fundamentalmente, y tal como lo dijo,
And
se dijo anteriormente,
as was said earlier,
integrar a las
we need
comunidades,
to include
a los
community,
beneficiarios, a los llamados stakeholders
fisheries and the
y
so-called
a los
stakeholders
diseñadores de
and
políticas
policy
en el
designers,
proceso de análisis y
policy
diseño
makers
de la
in this
estrategia de
process
gestión.
to design these policies for
Lo que en el fondo se está
fisheries management.
diciendo y lo que
Basically,
estamos
what we are
promoviendo en
saying
la
and
Universidad
what we are
Santa María
promoting at the
es
Santa Maria
promover un
University
enfoque
is
integrado,
to promote
adaptativo y ecosistémico para el manejo de la pesca.
comprehensive,
Eso implica recordar el
integrated,
campo académico y
adaptive,
en la gestión
ecosystem
misma,
approaches.
algo que es obvio, pero que hasta el día
This
de hoy
seems
todavía
obvious,
está
but to
olvidado.
date has
Que el
always been
manejo
forgotten.
pesquero es manejo de las
Because
comunidades y de
fishery
la gente,
management
no de los
has to
océanos y de
do
los peces.
with managing
Muchas gracias.
communities and people, and not
Muchas
the
gracias
oceans
al
and fish.
doctor Agüero.
Thank you very
Y
much,
muchas
Dr.
gracias a todos
Agüero,
los,
and
los
we
expositores
thank
que nos han
all
acompañado
speakers who
durante
have
esta mañana.
been with us this
Pero como
morning.
dijo la presidenta Bachelet ayer,
But as
lo
President
importante
Bachelet said
son las
yesterday,
exposiciones,
the
escucharnos
important
todos, pero
thing
también
is to hear
los
what we have
compromisos
to
que cada
say,
uno de los
yes,
actores,
but
asuma.
especially the
Le
commitments
vamos
taken
a
up
pedir
by each
a
one.
algunas personas que
And so
puedan
we will
expresar,
ask some people
sus
to
compromisos.
speak
primer
up
lugar,
with
a don
regard to their
Francisco Rego,
commitments.
presidente
First
de
of
la
all,
Sociedad
Francisco
Nacional
Rego,
de la
President of the
Pesca de
National
Chile, Zona Pesca.
Fisheries Association in Chile, Zona Pesca.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister, panelists. Well, for the Chilean Fisheries Association, it's an honor and a privilege to be here today in such important event, but also to be able to make some announcements in the line of sustainable fisheries. And if you allow me, Vice Minister, I will read a short declaration in Spanish.
A leer una
Los
breve
gremios
declaración en español.
pertenecientes a la Sociedad Nacional
The
de Pesca,
associations,
conscientes de la
members of
importancia
Sociedad Nacional de Pesca,
para Chile y
aware
para el
of the
mundo,
relevance of this activity for
agradecen
Chile
la
and the
invitación
world,
para participar
thank
en Nuestro
the
Océano
organizers
Chile
for
2015,
the invitation to take part in
acogen
our
el
Ocean
llamado
2015
formulado por el señor
and
canciller de Chile,
welcome
don Heraldo Muñoz,
the
por
call
el
made by
subsecretario de
the
Pesca,
Minister of Foreign
don
Affairs of
Raúl Zúñigo,
Chile,
y anuncian que han
Heraldo Muñoz,
suscrito
and Mr. Zunico,
voluntariamente
the Undersecretary for
una
Fisheries,
declaración para la
and
pesca
would like to
responsable
say
y
that they
sostenible,
have signed
redactada sobre la
a
base del Código de
text
Conducta
related to
para la
sustainable
pesca responsable de la
fisheries,
Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura
as
FAO.
well as the
Al
agreement
término de esta sesión
and
se les va a hacer
put
entrega
forward
de
by
un ejemplar de
FAO. At
regalo
the
de
end
este
of the
libro
event, we will
para
be
cada
giving
uno de
you a
ustedes.
copy of this book for each one of
Pero esta
you.
declaración constituye un
But this
compromiso formal
statement is a
destinado a
formal
alcanzar un
commitment
estándar de
to
nivel
achieve
internacional
an
en las áreas de la
international level
conservación de los
standard
recursos
in relation
marinos,
to the
el
conservation
medio
of marine
ambiente,
resources,
el
the
desarrollo
environment,
científico y
scientific
tecnológico,
and technological
la
development,
seguridad alimentaria,
food
la salud de las personas y el
security,
bienestar de los
the health of
trabajadores,
people,
además del
and
aporte de este
workers,
sector
in
al país a
addition
través del
to
crecimiento
the
económico.
contribution by this sector
Sabemos que
to
estos
economic
desafíos
growth
no
of the
van a estar
country. We
exentos
know
de
that these
dificultades,
challenges will not be
pero también
free
estamos
of
convencidos
difficulty,
que son
but we're
la
also
única
convinced they are the only way to raise the sustainability standards in a sector that is committed to the country's development. In this context, and as a first measure and in order to take a concrete step in this direction, the Sociedad Nacional de Pesca is proud to announce that they will, jointly with sectoral authorities, begin a process for the certification of sustainability of all industrial fisheries with individual quotas and that represent 92% of industrial shipments. Anchovies, sardines, jack mackerel, and all hakes, crustaceans, and golden conker eel. This will allow an exhaustive certification of good practices and possible areas for improvement in order to achieve the long-term sustainability that this industry is looking for. We will commit our best efforts to move ahead in all the recommendations stemming from this process. And finally, Zona Pesca, together with the joint effort of all its members, will continue to promote and constantly furthering responsible, sustainable fishing in order to achieve the goals contained in this commitment, and in the near future we're hoping to continue to announce new measures in order to achieve this goal. Thank you very much. Well, we thank them for this commitment, and undoubtedly for me it will be a matter of great pride to oversee and ensure that you're complying with this. And now, Holly Banford, Assistant Manager for NOAA, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Vice Minister, and the panel today for a fantastic panel. And I'm also very grateful to provide you a statement this morning on behalf of the U.S. government. So last year at this conference, President Obama asked the U.S. government to come together and develop recommendations to implement an IUU fishing as well as seafood fraud applications. I'm pleased to announce that we have made significant progress in the last 15 months. For example, in March, we did release our implementation plan to the recommendations that we have developed. Some of those include increasing and strengthening our enforcement activities, measures to create and expand domestic partnerships to detect illegal fishing and seafood fraud, as well as develop a traceability program to track seafood from harvest to entry into the U.S. commerce, beginning with the species most at risk for trafficking and fraud. The plan also outlines how the U.S. will work with international partners to address IUU fishing and seafood fraud, including through the administration's work to secure enforceable environment provisions in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I'm also very pleased to announce new steps that my agency, NOAA, is developing to provide observations and data to target illegal fishing. This includes an application to assist in detecting ocean-going vessels using visible infrared imagery, or VIIRS, which is satellite-based information. VIIRS is capable of detecting light at night, particularly from fishing vessels that use light to fish at night, to catch targeted potentially illegal activities for further inspection and information. In 2016, we're pleased to say this detection system and alert service will be implemented in Indonesia, the Philippines, and 3 other countries. In the following years, future partnerships will build capacity in other countries, bringing online another tool to our data toolbox to help increase global marine awareness. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Y seguramente todos vamos a estar atentos a la implementación de esta iniciativa y ver cómo se puede replicar en el mundo.
And we will be paying attention to see how this initiative is implemented. And now, Mr. Moose for the GEF Fund.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here with all of you as we commit to action on the oceans. And speaking of action, I'd like to share with you a couple of key initiatives that have been launched since the last Our Ocean conference by the Global Environment Facility together with our partners. These initiatives total investments over $500 million thanks to co-financing with our partners at a ratio of 9 to 1. First, Together with the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, UNDP, WWF, and Conservation International, we have launched a coastal fisheries initiative with pilots in nearby Peru and Ecuador, West Africa, and Indonesia, committed to strengthening governance institutions, building market platforms, and creating sustainable standards for the supply chain. Second, we've invested through UN Development Program and United Nations Industrial Development Organization in large marine ecosystems, meaning multinational initiatives in the Gulf of Mexico and Arafura Timor Seas. These initiatives join or are part of a family of over 23 large marine ecosystems worldwide where countries are coming together to work on addressing unsustainable fisheries, marine pollution, and habitat degradation. Realizing the importance of sharing lessons learned and experiences across geographies, we've also continued to commit and fund the International Waters Learning Platform, which provides a mechanism for sharing experiences across marine, coastal, and freshwater initiatives. Through all this work, it's become evident the importance of three things: partnerships, partnerships, and partnerships, whether across governments, NGOs, private sector, or academia. Finally, on a personal note, I wanted to mention when I was leaving for this conference a couple of days ago, my 3-year-old daughter was quite upset. My 5-year-old turned to her and said, "It's okay, Mommy's going to save the oceans." And as she did this, it occurs to me that this encapsulates the moment, this moment encapsulates why we're all here. Not just for us, but for our children and our grandchildren, for future generations, so that we can all benefit from the oceans and the wealth they provide all of us. In short, we're not here to save our ocean, we're here to save ourselves. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por sus motivadoras palabras. A continuación, vamos a
Thank you for
señor
those
Max
motivating
Kaplan,
words. And
fundador
now,
de TONG.
Max Kaplan, founder of TONG, will take the floor.
Hello, thank you everybody. Thank you to Secretary Kerry and to Minister Munoz for hosting this event. At our Ocean 2014, Secretary Kerry announced our public-private partnership with State Department to launch MFish. MFish is a mobile service for small-scale and artisanal fishermen. The way that fishermen get active on MFish is they receive what we call an activation kit. This includes an entry-level Android smartphone, solar power charger, and a 6-month data plan. They go through a training session with a local NGO partner to learn how to use this service. Since the announcement of MFish, we launched in Ampenan, Lombok in Indonesia with 50 fishermen and a local NGO partner named Lini. The results of that have been amazing. So on navigation, what we've seen is catch times reduced for day fishermen from 5 hours to 1 hour. We've also seen reduction in loss of life, so we've achieved the increasing safety at seas by the use of mobile technology. They use the messaging service to keep in touch with their friends, family, and share with other fishermen. One of the learnings that we had, we were given the expectation that fishermen were incredibly private, and once we gave them the capability to communicate, we found that it was very different than that. They share almost everything. Actually, we receive weather service reports from them back in New York, where we're based. We've also seen them logging their catch. So the catch log that we provide submits their catch to our local NGO partner, who can then submit their catch into government systems that we've integrated with. And what I also find incredibly exciting about this, given that we're a mobile technology company, is that at the expiration of the 6-month data plan, we've proven the affordability of mobile internet access at the base of the pyramid. So now fishermen are actually paying for their own data service at the affordable price that we've been able to provide it to them, making the service self-sustaining. Because of this success, because of the results of our pilots, we've received the endorsement of ICT Minister Rudy and President Jokowi in Indonesia for a national rollout. So by the end of 2015, we'll have activated about 23,000 fishermen in the country. And over the next year, we'll have a further rollout, hopefully reaching up to 100,000 fishermen connected. I'm also pleased to announce that on September 30th, we've partnered with USAID and WorldFish to launch our first pilots in Bangladesh of MFish. Excuse me. I'm also pleased to announce that we've expanded our services to include an ecotourism pilot for marine protected areas with Mission Blue and with the Coral Triangle Center that will launch in Indonesia by the end of this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaplan, for this effort. We are coming to the end of this panel. However, from what has been said, I would like to pick up on a couple of things that, in my view, are essential. We have a lot of biological information, so many experts and studies, but when it comes down to fisheries management as such, when you need to speak to the stakeholders and make decisions and implement these things that we've been told by the scientific community, that's when we come up again the biggest difficulties. And what this panel has shown is that there is more than biology in resource conservation, resource sustainability. There are many issues relationally to issues, models, and in our commitments themselves, we found a lot of innovation that is necessary in order to ensure the sustainability, preservation, and renewal of our fishing resources. Social sciences play an extremely important role in relation to sustainability and the recovery of fisheries. If we want sustainable fishing, biology is very important but not sufficient. We need to modernize fishing methods, relational skills based on the institutions themselves and their relations to the stakeholders in order to create a culture that favors the sustainability of these marine resources. I would merely like to say that during 2014, Chile did a study on marine mounts, and as of the month of February, all trawling in submarine or underwater mounts has been banned, where we have vulnerable ecosystems that we would like to protect for the future generations. I thank you for your attention, all speakers, everyone who's made the announcement, and I urge you all to continue working for sustainable fisheries.